I obviously didn't do a ton of film study. I probably did the most quote unquote film study of Kayvon because I just didn't understand how a guy that was considered like the for sure number one pick all of a sudden like was like now we're talking about him potentially not being a top 10 pick and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um but Trayvon I probably should have because like it really I think I had said something on Twitter to Ryan Matthews at Pride of Detroit because he had posted something about Trayvon going one. And I'm like, I don't understand. It was a clip, yeah, from NFL Network, and no, it was Bucky Brooks had Trayvon Walker going to the Lions at 2. And he in his analysis, he says, well, he's raw and he doesn't have a great pass rush. He doesn't have any really good pass rush moves, something along those lines. And I sat there and I'm just like, in the history of the draft, I can't think of another time where a guy went top 2 and you said that he wasn't good at the one thing he's supposed to be good at.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't
telling.
make sense. That doesn't make sense to me. Is how can a guy that you would be taking at 2 to essentially rush the passer and he's not great at it. And it's not like he's Jordan Davis-esque when it comes to stopping the run either. Like he's good at stopping the run, but he's not a game wrecker like Jordan Davis is at stopping the run.
All right. Welcome in another Tuesday. It's the Questionable Podcast with me, Gionne, and Meko.
What's good, man?
So, as you probably know, I'm not Scotty Questions, but I was channeling him as best I could. He is in Vegas for the draft. We're very excited. We've been getting photos and videos via text. Hopefully, we'll be able to post what we can. Some of it is confidential.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so hopefully we can get a little behind the scenes look. But yeah, so it's just us today. Hopefully we can keep the same energy. I feel like Scott brings a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like we had a good amount of energy, like pre-show. So obviously, like you guys did get to see a ton of that, but John and I had some pretty good spirited conversations beforehand. So, no, like John said, welcome into the show. Be sure to like, follow, comment, and subscribe. All places where you can find podcasts. We are also on YouTube, so be sure to head over there. Watch a video, like a video, comment on a video, and then if you like what you see, subscribe to the channel. We always appreciate all of our subscribers. But John, like let's not waste a lot of time. We have a lot of stuff that we want to get into. We have a lot of Lions talk we're going to talk because it's draft week. And so there's a lot of stuff that we want to get out the way. If you're kind of sick of the draft talk, good news for you. It's like the last week that we actually get to talk about it. And then next
What's
week,
the last week we get to speculate? Well,
yes,
I'm sure we'll still be talking a lot about it.
Well, next week we get to reakt though, and like that's entirely different. That way we get to put a lot of things to bed. So that's a good call on your part. So let's go ahead and kick things off with a little bit of around the horn, with some other local Detroit sports news. So one of the big ones that I think has a lot of people in an uproar is that we found out this past week, that Cade finished third in the NBA Rookie of the Year race. He came in third behind Evan Mobley, who finished second, and then the person who actually won Rookie of the Year was Scotty Barnes of the Toronto Raptors. Scotty Barnes averaged 15.3 points per game, 7.5 rebounds per game, and 3.5 assists per game. He also was a contributing factor to the Raptors, making it to the playoffs, which is a huge accomplishment when you consider Scotty Barnes was the 4th overall pick in the draft. So typically, obviously, that's a sign that, the team wasn't very good the year before. And so for them to make that type of jump to where they are now being in the playoffs, there's a lot of credit that is being attributed to Scotty. And I think it's rightfully deserved. But I think the question that's on a lot of, local fans' minds is, was Cade robbed in this situation? Was he robbed of the Rookie of the Year award? John, what's your overall opinion?
I just go back to what you were saying, that no one has ever won it that has not been Rookie of the Month 3 times, or less than 3 times. And
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, I mean, with that metric in mind, no, he wasn't robbed, but it seems like it still stings. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I
But
think that's go ahead.
counting their, like, as you said, their success taking them to the playoffs. I mean, it's sports, man. Wins matter more than stats, I guess.
Well, and I think that's the part that two things that you said there, right? Like, I think right now it stings, right? Because I think a lot of us being local Pistons fans and things like that, like we watched Cade night in and night out, and we saw the talent and we saw everything that made him the first overall pick. Obviously, statistically, he averaged more points per game. He averaged more assists per game. I think he even averaged like more steals per game than Scotty. But I do think like the deciding factor did come down to the other thing that you said, which are wins.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, I agree with you. I don't think he was robbed. I believe this was a very tight rookie of the year race. I think the only thing that could be debated is like Cade, I think only got like 2 first place votes. So I think that's something to kind of like draw attention to. I think he deserved more than that. I think it should have been a closer race between the 3 of those guys. But I think that's what you saw, is that a race with 3 guys at the top that were very productive for their teams. And when it all was said and done, the deciding factor that voters chose to go with were wins. And personally, I don't really have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with them being like the deciding factor in who wins this award is going to be, okay, all 3 of you guys put up incredible numbers for rookies. Which of your numbers, though, actually helped your team? Which of them actually propelled them to the next level? And I think when the dust settled, it was Scotty Barnes. Now, I think Scotty kind of benefited from Cade not being able to play as many games as he did. I think Cade played like 10 less games than Scotty did. But also, he also benefited from Evan Mobley getting hurt. Evan Mobley was out for much of March with an injury. And I think if Evan Mobley had continued to play down the stretch, I think Evan Mobley would have edged him out, just because what that Cavs team was able to do, making the playoffs for the first time without LeBron James, being one of the top teams in the East, and really kind of shaking off a lot of the negative media attention that they've been getting over the last few years. I think Evan Mobley deserves a lot of credit for that. So I think that's why you saw it be very close between him and Scotty when it came down to the end of it all. But outside of that, outside of the Pistons news, we also have some Tigers news, which is the big news being that Miggy finally gets his 3,000 hits in his career. He actually becomes the 3rd player in MLB history to record 3,000 hits, 500 home runs, and a batting average over 300. He joins Hank Aaron and Willie Mays as the only 2 other MLB players to have that collection of stats, which, I mean, for somebody who doesn't know a ton about baseball, that still is incredible. Just to kind of see that. And once you say that somebody's the 3rd, like, that's just ridiculous company to be a part of.
Yeah, that's always the fun thing about baseball for me, is like the history of the game, how old it is. Like, you have, like in basketball, when someone's stats are always, compared, Jordan, Bird, Magic, Allen Iverson, all these guys. But when it's baseball, it's like Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth, like these guys who colored photos don't exist of them.
Right.
Now I'm sure someone's going to, but like all of these photos like are in black and white, and pre World War II, these guys, like these guys were playing, and like, so to me it makes the accomplishment that what Miggy was able to accomplish just makes it more historical to me. If to be in those names, to be in that company, there's a sense of history, I think, to baseball that is it's real profound, and it's, I don't know, I think it makes it a lot. I know the game's very deep, and it's a lot of fun because of it.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think to your point about baseball and basketball, or comparing the two, I think basketball, like, we tend to draw comparisons to impact of players, right? Like this, like you said, like comparing like LeBron's impact to Jordan's impact, or Kevin Durant's impact to Larry Bird's, and so on and so forth. But with baseball, it's typically like raw numbers. Like, yo, there's not many guys that are doing like this collection of things. And when you look at Mickey's accomplishment, like 3,000 hits, 500 home runs, and to have a great batting average, like a batting average of over 300 is not easy to do over the course of an MLB career. So huge congrats to Miggy on that accomplishment. Would you say that Miggy is the greatest Tiger to ever play, in your opinion?
My very unqualified opinion.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I don't.
So yes.
Well,
he's certainly, so I think so on his stat sheet, or his position is, he plays first base, or is he just a designated hitter now?
Well, now he's just a designated hitter.
Okay. So I don't know, like that's my only, and someone who knows more about baseball, we're gonna have on the show and explain this, but
Sure.
The only reason why I would say he might not be the best Tiger of all time is maybe someone did more at their respective position and still hit up there. But for all I know, Miggy's a hell of a first baseman. And so I'm just gonna go say yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I know he just fully committed to DH this year, I believe, because I think last year he still played a little bit of first base. Because I think they had Candelario playing third. But since Torkelson came up, they moved Torkelson to first, and I think Miggy's now been relegated to designated hitter, which is fine, because again, him getting up there in age, it probably is more of a detriment to have him playing in the field than it is to just have him do one thing really well, game in and game out, which is probably why you're seeing him bat so well to start the season. But in my opinion, yeah, like in my, like you said, limited baseball knowledge experience, Miggy's the greatest Tiger, at least that I will say that I've ever seen. And I haven't been around as long as other people, but I mean, you think about a guy who has, we already talked about, the 3,000 hits and the other stats that go with that, but 2 Triple Crowns, he's won an MVP, he's won a World Series. Like, it's kind of hard to say that he isn't. I mean, again, limited baseball knowledge, but 2 Triple Crowns to me is like, was a done deal. Like, once he won 2 of those, it was like, well, yeah, kind of give him the crown of greatest Tiger ever.
Yeah. It's hard to deny, but again, we're gonna have to have on someone who can take us to school on baseball the way Eric Schlitt took us to school on the NFL salary cap rules. I look forward to that conversation.
Well, speaking of NFL salary cap rules, it's a good transition into our first Lions/draft topic of the night. The Detroit Lions picked up TJ Hockenson 5th-year option. This is something that Brad Holmes pretty much hinted about a couple weeks ago in his press conference, basically saying that if they couldn't come to like a long-term extension deal with TJ, that they were just going to end up picking up his 5th-year option. It gives them more time to work out a long-term deal if that's something they can come to an agreement on. But John, I'll just ask you straight up, like, was this a smart move, or was this the wrong move for the Lions to pick up TJ's 5th-year option?
Personally, smart move with maybe kind of an asterisk. I do think Hockenson is a very frustrating player because I feel like I always want him to be, and this is again part of the frustration. This might sound unfair, but I feel like I want him to be better than he is, and part of that's due to injuries. Part of that's due to intangibles, he is elite. I think he is in that top handful of tight ends. He's an incredible blocker. He's an incredible catcher. He does it all. And this isn't, I'm not saying this to disparage TJ in any way. The guy's elite. But I feel like this is where we're at with, you can't ignore where he was drafted. And again, it's frustrated. He didn't draft himself. He had no say in that. So it's kind of hard to hold it against him. It's hard to hold it against him, but at the same time, you can't. It seems unfair to not separate someone from their draft position and their performance. So through that stumbling word salad, somewhere in there was a response to your question.
No, but I agree with you, right? TJ being drafted 8th overall, he's had one Pro Bowl season. He's struggled with injury every year that he's been in Detroit. There's reasons why I could see someone say that this was a bad move to just pick up his 5th-year option and guarantee that he can be on the team, basically. Well, it's not really a guarantee, because I think they can still cut him if they decide to. But I do think it's a smart move. I agree with you that I think that TJ is one of the top 5 tight ends, I would probably say. I think you can make an argument for him even being, top 3 when healthy. And I think that's the biggest issue with TJ right now, is just, can he stay healthy? Can he do enough and be available enough to really show that level of elite play? I was actually watching, I went to my daughters had dance recitals or dance competitions this weekend. And during one of the other groups up there dancing, I was rewatching the Lions' first win against Minnesota, and forgetting TJ had 2 or 3 big catches on that drive. And it's one of those things where it's not a glamorous position. I think people say that all the time about tight end, and I think that's something that we have to keep in mind. No, it's not glamorous, but TJ, when available, is reliable. He gets open. He gets down the field well. He is a big catch threat. So to me, it was almost like a no-brainer. Pick up the 5th-year option and just see if you can keep him healthy.
Right.
And see if you can maybe coach him to do things a little differently when he's on the field, so that he can be available. Because when he's there, I mean, you have him plus Amon-Ra. The middle of the field is pretty much your oyster. You have, DeAndre Swift. You have a bunch of guys that are matchup nightmares. And obviously it's going to come down to price. What does TJ want to get paid? I think if he can come in here, and he just has to have a big season, right? I think if I'm him, I'm pretty sure that's what he's banking on is, okay, they picked up my 5th-year option. Let me go out there and ball out. If TJ can go out there, I would say he at least has to play 12 games, at least, probably even a little more, 12 to 14 games. If he can play 12 to 14 games, have another season that was very similar to his Pro Bowl season, you got to back up the truck, and you got to pay him like he's one of the top tight ends in the league. It may hurt a little bit, but I think he's worth it in the long run, because when he's healthy, he is just so good.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up, is what would it take to pay him? Or in your opinion, what performance would warrant backing the truck up and paying him top 3 tight end money?
Statistically, I already said what game-wise, right? I think game-wise, he has to play at least 12 to 14 games. Statistically, I want to say anywhere in the range of 800 to 1,000 yards receiving, and then 8 to 10 touchdowns. I know it's a lot, but I mean, we've seen TJ do it, right? We've seen him put up those kind of numbers. Granted, with Matthew Stafford, the offense looked a little different, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for TJ to do that again with Jared Goff, with them having a few more weapons and having a different OC as well.
Right.
TJ, even in the limited games that he played last year, he still almost put up 600 yards. He played 12 games, 583 yards, 4 touchdowns, 61 receptions. So it's not like there are tight ends in the league that would kill for that stat line.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's guys who would love to be able to say oh no, you can count on me for at least between 600 to 700 yards a season. And we're saying that's a down year for TJ. So
yes. Yeah, that's true. Putting things in perspective. Yeah. I want to go back to what you said about the stats you gave and being that's a lot, but I think it's fair in that it's realistic given his talent level. And
Yeah.
I think it's realistic considering how much money, if he hits those stats, how much money he's going to be asking for at the end of this year. Because it's going to be a lot, especially considering the position. So I think that's all fair. I think he's gonna have to have a big one. He's gonna have to have a big season.
Yeah, no, definitely agree about that. So switching gears again, like we talked about earlier in the show, this is draft week. We have a lot of things can finally get put to bed. Last week we did our first inaugural questionable mock draft, which was fun. Got a little bit of pushback in the comments in a couple areas about a couple decisions that we decided to make. But ultimately, I mean, that's what mock drafts are all about. It's all about having fun. So last week we talked about, at least when it came to the number 2 pick, we talked about the guys we wanted, right? You, me, and Scotty each have our preferred guy that we think would be a nice fit for the Lions at 2. One thing that we didn't get to really dive into, and I'm excited to kind of dive into this with you now, is who is the player that you're least excited about the Lions drafting at 2?
We're probably going to catch flack for it, but realistically, the player I'm least excited, I'd probably say Willis, just because I don't think we should be going quarterback at all.
Sure.
Personally, but I think I made that clear last week, but to what you were saying earlier, I would not be very excited if Hutchinson, if his name was called at number 2. I get it. And in Holmes we trust, but I would not be filled with a tremendous amount of excitement.
Listen, I'm not going to let you sit on that ledge by yourself, because I'm right there with you. It's when I put this question in the show notes, I had another player in mind, but when you and I started talking pre-show, like Aidan Hutchinson came up, and I'm like, yeah, that's another guy I'm not excited about. I would be happier about that person than the person I was originally thinking about, which was Travon Walker. Travon Walker is another guy I wouldn't be super excited about. And it's when it comes to Travon Walker and Aidan Hutchinson, the reason I would have little excitement is completely different for both players. Travon Walker, I wouldn't be excited for, because I believe all of the negative things that people have to say about Travon Walker is a clear sign of why you do not take him top 2. Like, there's talks about him going going first, but like, I can't think of another draft where we would be having a guy go potentially be the number 1 pick in a draft, and the number 1 thing you would expect him to do at that position, which is rush the quarterback, he's not good at doing. Like, that to me is beyond just ridiculous to me. So that's why I wouldn't be incredibly excited. I would be intrigued, because I would be really curious to see how the Lions could maybe pull, something out of him that Georgia wasn't. Maybe they're able to help him tap into something that Georgia just never took out time to help him develop or help him get better at. But that's why I have little excitement when it comes to Travon. Aidan, on the other hand, I used this analogy earlier, and you can let me know if it's a good analogy or not. But Aidan Hutchinson, to me, is Greek yogurt. A lot of people like Greek yogurt. I personally feel like Greek yogurt is like, it's pretty bland by itself. Now, if you can add some stuff to Greek yogurt, add some honey, add some fruit, some granola, some stuff like that, like, you get something really good with Greek yogurt. But Greek yogurt by itself is just meh. And I feel like that's my reaction to Aidan Hutchinson, is just meh. Could he come here and be really good? Yeah, probably, right? But like Travon Walker, one thing that I have never heard associated with Aidan Hutchinson is, oh, he has a much higher ceiling than we think he does. Like, everybody, when talking about Aidan Hutchinson, talks about him being safe, talks about him being reliable, and talks about him being like, what you're going to get out of this guy, which aren't bad things. I just don't know if those are the things that I want out of the number 2 player in the draft.
Yeah, and I think that sums it up, is that if we're drafting 10, 11, 12, 13, yes, it's an incredible pick. Even higher. But yeah, all of these things at 2, it's, we're going to touch on same old Lions, but it seems it's very Lionsy that this is the draft that we have the number 2 pick, and not say last year.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like Jamar Chase, Penei Sewell, Micah Parsons in this, I feel like genuinely in this draft class, they would be the consensus number 1 pick.
Yeah.
Any one of those guys would be the consensus number 1 pick in this draft. And, you can say things, you can say, as much as I disagree with it, taking him, you can say great things about Malik Willis. You can say great things about Thibodeau, Walker, Hutchinson, Hamilton. You can say great things about all of these guys, but can you say those things at 2? I think that really just comes to that's the crux of this entire 3-month, 2-month-long debate that we've been having 4 months, God, now at this point. And
it's been a long draft season.
Yeah, and I think that's really what it comes down to. And that's why I think we just do this mantra of in Holmes we trust. But I'm going to kick off this next part by just saying I don't really watch that much college football. I always watch it when I go home for the holidays. But on Saturdays, it starts at 9 a.m. over here. So that's early for college football on a Saturday.
That takes a certain level of commitment that you're not really ready to give it just yet.
Exactly. So, but I've just, based on nothing. And again, listeners, I'm basing this just on gut feelings. It's just, Hutchinson just doesn't inspire, I'm not excited. He just doesn't. And a part of that is this conversation about Ojabo. As I hear a lot of people saying, oh, well, if he's there at 32, take him. Or if he's there at 34, take him. And I don't know, even before the Achilles injury, I'd take him at maybe 97. But
yeah,
I think he was a great, on the opposite side of Hutchinson. He was great for U of M. And they were great together because you had to account for both of them. And so you had to spread your resources thin, and they were good enough that one of those 2 guys was getting through. But then they went up against Georgia, probably the most NFL ready defense in college, and they got shut down. And a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, they held Hutchinson, and oh, well, they game plan. They never run directly at him. Well, guess that happens in the NFL too. There's nothing unique to the college game in those 2 caveats to that game. So, and I just think if that Georgia D-line did that to those 2 guys, I think it really got exposed that they were really great college level tandem. They were fantastic college level tandem rushing team. And, I don't know how well that's going to translate to the NFL. If you put Hutchinson on the opposite of Charles Harris, as we were talking about before the show, and Charles Harris continues, as we're all hoping that he does. He had an incredible season last year compared to the rest of his career. He had an incredible season. So if he keeps going on the way that we all hope, then, bringing in Hutchinson, making Hutchinson the Lions Ojabo, then I think having a guy that's going to come in and get 7 sacks right off the bat, just old reliable, that's good. That's maybe even great. Second pick, though, you have to keep coming back to it. And and
it's also looking, maybe this is a little unfair, but looking down the road, when you have to pay Aidan Hutchinson, when that contract is up and you have to pay him, I don't know. What do you pay a guy? Again, strictly speculating and projecting, but what do you pay a guy that just consistently gets 7 sacks a year? And he never he never puts up double-digit sacks, or he never is considered I don't even want to say necessarily not a game record, but he's just he's just a guy. I don't know how else to put it. And
some say
like
there is a man.
Yeah, like I don't. Again, I won't go on a whole nother Kayvon Thibodeau tangent right now, but I at least will say like that is something that has been said about Kayvon is that he has he has a much higher ceiling, and if he can continue to hit that ceiling, he is going to be like a nightmare to deal with down the road. And so for me, to your point, John, like if we were talking about picking in the middle of the first, late first, and we were talking about Aidan Hutchinson, like I would feel probably a little more excited about this pick. I watched more Michigan games than I usually do. I usually care to. And when you watch, like, yeah, he's a very good player, but I never was like super excited about it. Or when they were talking about him going one, like I wasn't jumping for joy about, oh, the Lions could get this guy. I think I've more so just kind of talked myself into it. Like just because a lot of other people are excited about it. So I'm just like, all right, well then yeah, if we get him, then great. But it's kind of like fake excitement. If we're talking again about making this pick at 2, I would rather swing for the fences. I'd rather take the gamble on a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau and take a gamble on that ceiling and invest in that player to help get him to the potential that a lot of scouts say that they see in him. And that's just kind of my opinion on the situation when it comes to those two guys.
Yeah. And I feel like oddly, because I mean, I agree with you, but oddly enough, it seems like I shouldn't, because my whole thing is, because that's part of my whole reason why I don't want to draft a quarterback is because, you know, slow and steady wins the race. And that seems to be Brad Holmes, build from the trenches. You do what's safe. Sure. You do what's reliable. Basically every word that we use just describe Aidan Hutchinson is kind of what we've been commending Brad Holmes on for the job he's been doing so far as GM. So it seems weird now to turn around and be like, nah, I don't want that guy.
I think to your point though, it's because it's at 2 though. It's not because we're not saying that we're not saying that we don't want a consistent guy. And I'm definitely not saying that I would love having Kayvon Thibodeau and him be like this up and down guy every year. Like I'm not saying that either. I'm just simply saying that I would rather take that gamble on it being like I would rather take that lottery ticket and have the chance of hitting the lottery big with Kayvon than just knowing that like I'm basically getting a $50 scratch off every week with Aidan. Right? Like I know that I'm making some money, but I'm never like quite hitting the jackpot. Like I'm turning in that scratch off every week after every game and being like, well, yeah, he got a sack. He got a sack or two.
Right.
But but then like there's stretches where he doesn't, or again, just, I don't know. Maybe I feel differently after if they do draft him and he goes out there in his first game and he's just dominating tackles, because again, neither one of us are saying that he doesn't have talent. We're not, you know, scoffing at the power or the speed or the pass rush ability. It's nothing like that. It's just maybe it is the 4 months of everybody hyping up Aidan Hutchinson, and now that it's a possibility, it's just kind of just like I don't know. Maybe I've talked myself into Kayvon a little too much.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is like this clicked when you said 4 months. I mean, that's pretty much how long the football season is. And that's how long Kayvon was the consensus number 1. And then the season ended, and then Hutchinson was the consensus number 1. And it's been about 4 months. And now we're getting Hutchinson fatigue kind of in the same way. I'm sure all these people who had to write every day about Thibodeau are like, is he the number 1? I don't know. And so now like we've reached that 4-month tipping
come
point.
Full circle.
Yeah,
we're full circle in the draft.
Because now we're talking about Trayvon at 1, and so now it's if the draft was 4 months away, he would be the consensus number 1 for 4 months, and yeah, it's just this media
that's hilarious
invented cycle, like that time that those 2 weeks. I think we did that show. There's those 2 weeks where Kyle Hamilton, everyone was saying Lions are going to take Kyle Hamilton. It was like a little 2 week thing right before the combine. And then the combine happened and he wasn't this transcendent generational talent that everyone kind of expected him to be. And so then that died down, and then it was right back to, what we've been talking about for 4 months.
Well, speaking of Kyle Hamilton and basically coming full circle, one thing that, like I said, last week we did our mock draft and I got into a couple pretty good conversations. I wouldn't even say that they were debates, but just good back and forth with some of our subscribers and some of our followers about the idea of, SOL, same old Lions, and this narrative that there could potentially be a pick, like the Lions could make a pick this year that would have people being like, oh, this is just the same old Lions doing this all over again. And personally, like, I push back against that, but I'm really curious on your take. Like, do you believe there is a possible pick that could be made in this draft that would have you sitting back being like, oh, these are just the Lions being the Lions?
Not really realistically. Like, obviously, if they draft like a fullback or long snapper or, fullback, I think I already just said. But if they did that, then yes, same old Lions. But I would really question if they went offensive line. That would be seemingly a waste of the number 2 pick. But look, if they get Walker, Hutchinson, Thibodeau, one of those guys, even Malik, I wouldn't like it, but at the same time, I really do think this. I really do think this time it's different, guys. But tying into the same old Lions. But if they pick one of those 4, I'd be fine. I don't think you can say same old Lions if it's one of those 4. If it's or maybe even Kyle Hamilton. Let's even throw Sauce Gardner in there.
I was gonna say, I think we could even throw Sauce in there. Yeah.
If it's one of those six people, then I don't think you could make an argument that it's the same old Lions, because again, this isn't last year's draft. If Jamar Chase was there and on the board at number 2 and you did not take Jamar Chase, then yeah, that's the same old Lions move. Or Sewell. If you're on the board at 2 and Penei Sewell is there and you don't take him, then yeah, same old Lions move. But with this class being what it is in this year, I really don't think. There's so many unknowns. Each player has their own downside. Each player has their own caveat and flaws and intangibles and upsides, that it's really coming down to fit. And we are not privy to what's going on, the conversations in the front office and in the locker rooms.
Yeah.
We don't know who's the best fit. Hopefully they can assess that and make the right call. And we're probably not going to know till the end of next season, like with Amon-Ra St. Brown. He really turned it on the back half of the season. And like by the end of the season, it was like, oh my God, this guy was in the 4th. With 16 wide receivers went before him, as we were talking earlier. So like, I don't really think if it's one of those core 4-6 guys, I don't think you can use the same old Lions label.
Yeah. And maybe I'm being too confrontational when it comes to the SOL thing. Like I personally, like, if we're talking football, if we're talking about what the Lions should do, and within your argument you use same old Lions, like me personally, I start to discount everything that you just said, because I think one thing that we definitely have to take in consideration, and somebody said this on Twitter because we threw up a poll on like what would be considered a same old Lions pick. Somebody pointed out that like with the combination of Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, and Sheila Ford, like nothing about this feels like same old Lions. Nothing they've done as a unit together feels like same old Lions. And I feel like if we're going to sit here and say in Brad Holmes we trust, if we're going to give Brad Holmes all this credit for being a great drafter, for doing his due diligence when it comes to the NFL draft, there is a certain level of a leap of faith that you have to take when it comes to who he possibly picks. And I've been of the belief that whether it's a defensive end or a quarterback, you're still going in the same direction. The rebuild isn't drastically off track, I feel like, if you take either of those positions. I just think that you're just taking a slightly different route. Because the ironic thing is that I don't think no matter who they pick at 2, this team isn't going to be drastically better this upcoming season.
Right.
If you think they're going to win, if you think they're going to win 6-7 games, I still think they're going to win 6-7 games if they pick Malik, or they're going to win 6 or 7 games with Aidan, Kayvon, or Trayvon. Like it's not drastically different. I agree with you. Kyle Hamilton and Sauce, or at least should be. I'm okay with the picks. Okay with them being in the conversation. I'd be a little confused by Brad Holmes' like strategy to go in that direction.
Yes,
but I would trust him. I would trust him and Aaron Glenn and Aubrey Pleasant to figure out how to use those guys in the secondary to at least be able to sit back and be like, okay, not the way I thought they were going to go, but nothing about that screams same old Lions to me. When I think same old Lions, I think about ignoring obvious needs or ignoring obvious talent to pick something shiny. You know, same old Lions to me is taking Eric Ebron over Aaron Donald. It's I can't even think about it. Just like it's taking Jelani Tavai in the second round when he was clearly like had a third, fourth round grade on him. It's doing stuff like that. Like short of them pulling a Mike Mayock, which is, if anybody remembers this draft, when Mike Mayock took Cleveland Farrell with the 4th overall pick when he was projected to go late first, like short of the Lions doing something like that, that's the only thing that would be like, what that would have me like, what the hell is Brad Holmes doing? This does not feel like the new regime that we've come to know. So I think it's getting a little overused a little bit by the fan base. I feel like it's a defense mechanism. Like when we don't like things, there are people that'll just be like, oh, this is same old Lions. And it keeps them from being able to have to accept that something could be a possibility and really embracing it for potential good. What it could potentially be really good for the team.
Yeah. So I may be misappropriating the term, but to me, same old Lions means that you're in a place where no matter, because the Lions are making the decision, it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
And like, because the Lions are losers, because the Lions suck, anything they do sucks. And like, no matter what they do, it's the wrong decision. To me, that's what same old Lions mentality is. It's because like you said, we can have a debate about defensive end, quarterback. You can even make a case for Kyle Hamilton and Sauce Gardner. Again, we might be surprised we may disagree with the route they're taking, or like, oh, how is this going to work? But seeing what Aaron Glenn got out of the defense last year, we can suspend judgment enough. But I think it's this idea that if the pick is Malik, oh, well, the Lions did it and the Lions suck, therefore this pick sucks. I think to me, that same old Lions attitude, it's more of like an attitude than like a fan. And it's, I think I texted Scott this, like, it's like nihilism. It's just black-pilled nihilism where just there's no hope. Everything sucks. And no matter what they do, it's the wrong thing because they suck and just everything sucks. But I'm going to watch every Sunday. Because
and that's the thing, right? Like you're still gonna watch every Sunday, and so that's I agree with you. There's so many different ways that we can debate and attack the number 2 pick. That I think ultimately, like I think we're all going to walk away from the draft after that pick and be like, they made the right decision in some capacity. It may take some of us a little bit longer to come to that conclusion, but I trust this coaching staff. I trust this GM. I trust the scouting that they've done. So whoever that pick may be, I have a great deal of faith in those guys that they're making the right pick overall. So outside of the second pick, though, like we've talked a lot about the second pick, both this week and last week. One thing I am wondering, though, we have 7 other picks that we're going to have to make. Which of those picks, though, do you believe is the most important for the Lions to hit on when it comes to this draft? And it could be possibly 2, but which do you think is the most important for you?
I think so. I'm going to kind of cheat here and say, just because they're basically back to back, I'm going to say 32 and 34. We've heard for months that and we just outlined there's no consensus number 1, but it is pretty deep. The safety class is fantastic. The wide receiver class is fantastic. The linebacker class is fantastic. So I think some combination. Again, I want to see defense. So some combination of safety and linebacker at 32 and 34. I think that is can't miss, because I think there will still be really, really good. In our mock, Nakobe Dean was still available. Scene was still available. If somehow Daxton Hill is there, I mean, there's so many possibilities between the position of safety and linebacker that I think taken in tandem, I think that's the most important.
So again, this is another thing that you and I talked about pre-show, and I ended up changing my mind. Originally, I said the 66th pick. And the main reason was because to what you just said, I thought there was like no way that they could kind of mess up their first three. I think there's just going to be good talent available to them. Obviously, at number 2, I think we're going to see somebody fall to them at 32 that shouldn't be there, and that should make it easy to pick that person. And then you basically have back-to-back picks with 34, where you can probably find another really good player. But after talking to you about it, and after listening to a couple other people talk about this topic, I kind of started to focus in on the 32nd pick. And it's not necessarily like that they have to hit on the 32nd pick, but it's that I think that they can do a lot of unique and different things with the 32nd pick. There's a lot of discussion that's been going on about the Lions potentially, if they wanted to, they can probably package the 32nd pick with maybe some future draft assets or something along that line, and go up if they feel like a guy is falling to them and it's in a range that they are willing to somewhat like mortgage a little bit of their future to go up and get a really good player right now. And then there's also the talk about, well, the Lions could also trade back from 32, and then you end up getting potentially 2 picks in the second, and maybe you finally get that 4th round pick, seeing as the Lions don't have one. So a lot of attention for me now is actually going to be focused on that 32nd pick, because whether they choose to trade up, trade down, or stay put, a lot of good things I think can happen with that pick overall. So I'm super going to be I'm going to be super locked in on that pick. If they keep it, like you said, in our mock draft and a lot of other people's mock drafts, I think Nakobe Dean probably is going to fall. I think somebody's going to overthink his size and his measurables. People did the same thing last year with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who ended up going in the 2nd round to Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people said that he should have went 1st round. He didn't go 1st round. He fell to Cleveland in the 2nd and was lights out, was easily probably the 2nd best linebacker in that draft class behind Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
So I feel like the same thing could potentially happen with Nakobe Dean. If you're the Lions, don't let him fall to the 2nd round, because who knows what Jacksonville might do. They let go of Miles Jack, so they could potentially try to take him. I would take him at 32. I think, again, you have a lot of options at 32. Again, if you stay put, you can draft a linebacker, you can draft a safety, you can draft a wide receiver if you want to, because the wide receiver market has gotten insane this offseason, and that 5th-year option for a wide receiver might be really valuable to you if you're a team like the Lions and you want to have some long-term depth there. So for me, yeah, that's the pick that I'm going to be zeroed in on.
All right. Actually, I liked your 66 though, because to me that was right when we did our mock. That was when it started to get really hard. Because while we said, like this draft class is deep, that depth starts to wear out around like 45, 50. And so like when 66 came around, that's when, like, again, professional scouts, they've done their diligence, but that was when I was like, oh, who are these guys? and well, yeah, I feel like that. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I think that's where 66 is a pick, in my opinion, where you are going to have to make a decision to continue to, like, again, we don't know how the Lions are going to draft. I think a lot of people, when they've been drafting for Lions needs, or what we believe to be the Lions needs. 66 though seems like the fork in the road, where you have to make the decision between picking for need or picking talent. And
you're out of that talent tier.
Yeah. So like this may be your last opportunity. Again, hypothetically speaking, this could potentially be your last opportunity to get high talent at 66 before you have to just start trying to plug holes for the rest of the draft. So that was kind of my thought process with 66.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I didn't think of it that way until I saw that in the notes, and then the more I thought about it, that's a really good one.
Yeah. Well, before we go, I want to go back up to 32, right? Because like we said, or like I was saying, like there's a lot of potential. We both were basically saying like 32, 34. There's a lot of potential with those two couple picks and just in that range. Another thing that we've seen in a lot of mock drafts, and it's continuing to still happen, is that the Lions are being mocked a quarterback in a lot of situations at 32, whether it be Sam Howell, whether it be Matt Corral, whether it be Desmond Ritter. I even heard somebody throw Kenny Pickett out there, that maybe Kenny falls to 32 and could be a good fit for the Lions. So I'm not going to ask you, do you think the Lions pick a quarterback and which one should they take? But my question is, if you had to put money down, right? If you had to be Scotty for a day, be in Vegas and throw some money on the craps table, what would you put your money on more likely happening? That the Lions trade down from 32 or that they take a quarterback at 32?
My answer is going to be tinged with bias just because I don't want to see them take a quarterback. So I'm going to go with that, with what I want to have happen. It worked out for my predictions during the regular season. What I wanted to have happen, trade down. I think it's more likely they trade down. I really think, again, because we've had to fill 4 months of airtime, I thank God that this, I love this show. I love doing it. I love you guys. But if I had to do this every day, I might be, I'd be pulling it. I wouldn't have eyebrows anymore. I would have yanked all the hair out. And I think we've overthought how good this quarterback class is. I really do. I think because it's such an important position, the most important position, so it warrants being talked about. But I just think that because quarterback has to go high because of its position and because of the value and because of how important it is, therefore, if you're a quarterback, you have to be in this conversation that we're having. And I think, I just don't think that's the case. So,
yeah. No, so this, I'm going to do a little bit of a caveat. You did a caveat earlier with the 32, 34. So I'm going to do a caveat here. I believe if the options of quarterbacks are like Desmond Ritter and Sam Howell, no, I think the Lions pass. I think they would be more likely to trade down than they would to take either of those guys. However, if a guy like Kenny Pickett falls to 32 or a guy like Matt Corral is still kicking around at 32, I do think you have to consider it. I do think the Lions have to consider it a little bit, because we talked about this a little bit earlier when we were talking about TJ's contract, right? Like TJ's going to be is in line to get paid. Amani Oruwariye is in line to get paid. That rookie contract for a quarterback is so valuable. And I know you can't necessarily make decisions based off of that. I completely understand. So I know people are already in the comments like, that's not why you make that pick. I get it. Trust me. But I'm still not completely sold that Jared Goff is the long-term answer. And I think if you get lucky and have one of those two guys, like I am keeping it locked at those two guys, Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral, and I'm not even saying you take them. I'm just saying it should be a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I would pause about trading down. But if you had like gun to my head, I got to put money down, I got to bet the house, it would be on trading down. I think Brad Holmes would love the ability to stock up on draft picks, especially in that middle round range where they don't have a pick, in that 4th round range. And if they can potentially get future draft assets, even better. Gives you more ammo in the off chance that you need to trade up next year, which I know some people aren't a fan of that either. But it really comes down to their evaluation of this draft class. I like Kenny Pickett. I've said this before. If they love Jared Goff, if that's what they've been saying all this entire offseason, they love Jared Goff. If they love Jared Goff, then you should love Kenny Pickett, because he's Jared Goff with legs. Take the minor upgrade then, right? Like, he's small hands, great, accurate passer, can make a bad decision here or there, but at least he can get out the pocket and make a guy miss. And at least he's gonna he's gonna do his due diligence and wear gloves to protect the football.
So, interesting. I was just looking up. I was curious because you said he's everything Jared Goff. Jared Goff is 6'4", and Kenny Pickett is 6'3".
So they're basically the same guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm kind of intrigued by Matt Corral. Right? Like something about Matt Corral. I get that we didn't get to see a lot of him in the offseason, but he was somebody that was highly touted up until, he injured his ankle and then he had to sit out a lot of this draft evaluation process. And I think that's the only reason we're talking about him potentially falling to 32 is just like, they didn't get to, a lot of people haven't got a chance to really evaluate him outside of the regular season. So that's another guy. I wouldn't hate it. I would understand it. I would understand the pick of a Kenny Pickett or a Matt Corral at 32. And it would be off this, like, it's as simple as Jared Goff is in line to potentially make $30 million. And unless you think Jared Goff is going to pull a Tom Brady and takes considerably less to help you continue to flush out this roster, to continue to help you add good players, because I don't think you can let an Amani Oruwariye walk out the door. I'm not sure if TJ puts up great numbers, if you can let TJ walk out the door. What happens when Amon-Ra needs a new deal? Like, you're going to need this cap flexibility sooner than later.
Yeah. 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 Well, so yeah, I just keep going back to that. Like, well, you can't make your decision based on that. But then when you frame it in those terms, we got a lot of players coming up in the next couple of years, next 3 or 4 years. Amon-Ra St. Brown being the biggest one, considering how the wide receiver market exploded.
Yeah.
Knowing him, like, he's not slowing down. I think.
I mean, you look at next year with DJ Chark. Like, what if DJ Chark blows up?
Oh man, yeah, Which God willing, he stays healthy and blows up, and then you're faced with.
I mean, if he blows up and he has a great year, and you don't draft a receiver this year, you got to pay DJ Chark. So, I think you have to. I think they have to give quarterback more thought than people would care for them to give it, in all honesty. And I know that kind of sucks, because that means you're not addressing another position. That means you may not get the safety that you want, or you may not get the linebacker you want. But yeah, that tab is coming up quickly for the Lions.
Yeah. I'd like to think Goff would restructure and take a little less money. I don't know him, but just from his press conference, he just seems like such a dude. He just it could be like, hey, Jared, you want to take less money to help the team? Oh, well, sure. Okay. If that's what you want me to do.
I mean, him and Tom do have one thing in common. Both of their significant others, or I think it's his girlfriend, but she's like isn't she like a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model or something? I mean, that's not just, I get it. It's not Giselle level model, like fashion icon, but we all got to start somewhere.
True.
So I don't know. That would be some good incentive. Be like, hey, tell your girl to get on Fashion Week, and then you'll be paid, and you don't have to ever worry about it ever again.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Couple other things that I want to talk about with the draft. So we talked about the 32nd pick. We talked about the second pick. Obviously, I don't want to go through every other pick individually, but let's just say in general, what positions do you think the Lions need to address in this draft weekend? Like, they need to come out of this draft and you'd be able to be like, okay, at least they addressed X position.
I mean, I've been pounding the table for linebacker since the season ended. So I know it really seems like they're going to address defensive end with their second pick, regardless of who. So I'm going to say linebacker.
Yeah. I'm going to say defensive tackle. Ironically, I know they double dipped into it last year. That's another position very similar to linebacker and very similar to safety, where we see guys up front, but then we forget like there's not much depth behind those guys. You have Aleem, you have Levi, Michael Brockers can play a little bit of D tackle. You have John Pennicini. We don't know how much longer Michael Brockers is going to play. John Pennicini is literally just a depth guy. Like, great culture fit, all that, but he's a depth guy. He's never going to be that guy that's like a true difference maker on this defensive line. So you're really looking at two guys that you're looking on building your future with. So I need to see them kind of come away. Doesn't have to be high unless a guy falls to you, right? Like if they're looking at 66 and a DeMarvin Leal is still there and they're like, oh, we would love to have this guy, or you know, the trade scenario that we were talking about with 32, and maybe you get another second pick and you want to take a DeMarvin Leal, a Perion Winfrey, a Travis Jones, like that's good to me. I'm not going to be that. I'm personally not going to be that fan that's like, oh, they're taking another defensive tackle high. No, take another one. Take as many as you can, because right now you have a 3-man rotation at that position. Right. Granted, they could still maybe pick up somebody in free agency, but I'm looking for long-term. I think for all these positions, right? Like linebacker and defensive tackle, we're looking for long-term solutions, not just stopgap players, you know, for these two positions. So that would be my pick.
That was the position you brought up. I hadn't really thought of it before we did the mock. There like a week or two before we did the mock, you brought up defensive tackle, and I looked into it, and the case you made, which is similar to the one you just made now, and it's a good one, man. Their depth. I mean, that's what, like, look at any success that our offense had last year. I think you can credit the depth. You know, Jonah Jackson played every single position on that O-line. Evan Brown came in for Frank Ragnow and played stellar. And like just the value of depth, that front five never played a single game all together last season. And so, yeah, just depth, man. It's especially, you know, building from the trenches, depth.
Yeah. So maybe in the same vein, maybe this is the same question. Maybe it's slightly different. The Lions would, in your mind, the Lions would win the draft if they do what?
Poof.
Yeah, it's a bit of a loaded question because
because I mean, the Lions win the draft if they do what I want them to do.
I thought like you were going to say the Lions win the draft if they don't take a quarterback.
No, well, Scott be like, the Lions win the draft if they take a quarterback and 2 wide receivers. So in the, but no, I'd say I'll just say if they focus on defense.
Okay.
I'm not going to say they go exclusively. I'm not going to say, because if there's their guy, a wide receiver at 32 or 34 and they go for it, fine. But if the overall focus is on defense, again, like you said, there's picks that we can all make arguments for, and that depending on who gets picked at what position, that'll give us clues as to the route they're taking to get there. But so long as it is primarily defense, I think we can be happy, and I think we can win the draft.
Yeah. I would say something similar to what you're saying, right? I feel like the Lions win the draft if they can come away with a strong defensive end linebacker combo. I am, when I look at that defense, those are the two positions that, like, the secondary played really, really well. I think Aleem and Levi, they have room to grow, but I feel like for 2 rookies, they vindicated themselves well. They played well enough to where you'd be like, okay, I feel confident about these 2 guys. And like I just said a few minutes ago, if they can add another piece, another guy in that room that, you know, can, again, iron sharpens iron type of situation where you have 3 guys that are going to be in this for the long haul together, I would be super pumped about that. But defensive end and linebacker were just 2 positions where the play just wasn't consistent enough. And I think if you can get you a whether it's a consistent guy, if you can get some Greek yogurt and Aidan, or you can get your
$50 scratcher,
right? Or if you can hit the lottery on a Kayvon, that's a win. And then if you can pair that up with, I don't even care who the linebacker is really. If it's one of the top guys, if it's a Devin Lloyd, if it's a Nakobe Dean, if it's a Quay Walker, Chad Muma. Like, just get one of these really athletic, rangy linebackers that you can pair next to Derek Barnes for the future. And unless you have two for the future, let the rest of these guys play.
Yeah.
Davis, let those guys just kind of figure out everything else on their own.
Yeah. And I think that's why I'm so excited, I think, for that tandem of 32-34, because one of those linebackers that you just named is going to be there. One of the safeties, Brisker, Piter, if I'm saying that right, Hill, Scene,
Petre, I think it is.
Petre?
Yeah.
Piter. So yeah, Petre, Scene, Hill, Brisker. One of those four are going to be there for safety. One of those four are going to be there for linebacker. So it's very exciting. It's going to be frustrating though, because they're back to back and we've been talking about them back to back, but it's going to be a whole day apart.
Oh right? Yeah. So we're going to be sitting there sweating on, Thursday's only round one.
Yeah.
And then at least with Friday, we get second, third round. So at least we'll get you get a little more of a fix to at least get a few more things off your back, because dude, I'm going to be nervous. I would be so nervous if they went quarterback at 2.
Oh man.
Because I would I'm really focused in on 32 and 34. And it's just like, what the hell are you about to do with those 2 picks?
Yeah. I just realized that just now as I was talking that it's a day apart. We gotta wait.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know, John. There's one more question here that we could discuss, but I'll leave it up to you if you want to dive into it or not.
About Brad Holmes?
About Brad Holmes and some of the players speaking this week or last week.
Did any of them watch The Batman on HBO? Did any of them talk about
you
that?
did.
No.
No. I wish that's the oh man, I wish somebody would ask random questions. I wish there was just one guy in the media that would just ask a random question. Have you seen The Batman?
Yeah.
And just to see if anybody bites on it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they do they did that with the little the board. There's little camera outside the locker room, and it would have a question, and the players would kind of answer the question coming out of the locker room as they took the field last offseason. Remember them doing that? And one of the questions was, what's your favorite episode of The Office? And some of the answers were really funny, especially considering, because I think it was Jeff Okuda just stopped, looked dead into the camera, and said that show's overrated, and just walked away.
Yeah, just kept walking. Listen, if there's nothing else I've ever agreed with Jeff Okuda on, it's that. I'm sorry. I've tried. I don't get it. I don't. Yeah. This is the weird thing though, right? When it comes to The Office, I get the memes. The memes are funny. The show as a whole, I never laughed that much at it. So
yeah, yeah, man, it was so long ago. It's brutal to think about. I was like, where was I when I was watching that on TV? And it was too long ago. I don't even want to think about it. Changing gears. But no, Brad Holmes comments. I
want to go. No, I'll forget Brad Holmes. I want to talk about the Batman now, because you brought it up, and now I want to know your thoughts on. Because I haven't really got to talk to anybody outside of my wife about it. So, okay, what were your thoughts of the Batman?
I loved it. It was so our listeners might know the reason Scott keeps joking about the red carpet is I live in Los Angeles, and I'm currently working towards becoming a film composer. I scored my first feature film last summer, and trying to keep that ball rolling. And that's the first thing I always go to. And and I was the music in that. Michael Giacchino, he's the best in the biz right now. He's so good. And the music was so good that it was 3 notes for Batman's theme. And then, the Riddler's was just that shrieking violin up. The music was so good. And I think it was the first Batman, in my opinion, where Batman really, by the end of it, really felt like a hero. as opposed to like in the Nolans, I think like he's the guy fighting the Joker. He's the guy fighting Scarecrow. He's the guy fighting Bane. But in this one, it was the first one where Batman like really felt like a hero, because unlike in the Nolan ones, I think Batman grew. The opening scene, we saw him beating those thugs on the train. That little gang, and who are, I mean, I don't know if that was kind of a commentary. I think like they were playing the knockout game. But so like he definitely saved this guy who was going to get, beat up in the subway. But, and because this has always been my critique of Batman, as like, is that the best use of your abilities? Is just like beating up poor people, like in the streets? Like, is that your best use of your billions of dollars and your ninja moves and all of it? Like, you are misappropriating your abilities so horribly that it makes me think like you are not a net positive for the city of Gotham.
You are what's bringing Gotham down.
In a way, or I should say, you are doing nothing. You are not helping anyone outside of like this individual in this moment, which if you're that individual, it's really important, but you're not actually helping to like alleviate, the causes of crime and poverty and corruption, which this is the first Batman that I have ever seen that actually addresses this. Because it's first time we see Batman, he's just beating up people in the subway, bad guys. And then by the end of it, he's realizing like, oh no, there's institutions. There are systems in place that are affecting so many more people than these random people in the subway. And that's what I need to address. That's what I need to fight, are these institutions and it's corruption in institutions. And that's why I loved it so much.
I'll agree with you on that. That's actually a really good observation from you. Like, watching that movie in that same vein, you can see Robert Pattinson's Batman go from being just wanting to be a symbol and be this, like he talks about it early in the movie. Again, this is spoilers, but if you don't have HBO Max, this is on you. Like, this is not a us problem. This is a you problem. But he starts out the movie talking about fear being this tool that like helps him kind of be everywhere, right? Like, even though he can't be everywhere, the fact that he's instilled so much fear in the 2 years that he has been Batman just permeates throughout the city. So it makes everybody think twice. But to your point, it doesn't necessarily keep anybody from committing crime. It just makes them like wonder, like, is he going to stop my crime tonight?
Yeah, am I gonna get my shit kicked tonight?
Right. But by the end of the movie, he's gone from like understanding that he can be more than just a symbol of fear to like an actual hero. Like, it's not just about stopping the guys at the end of the movie, just like stopping those guys and beating those guys up. It's actually about saving those people. It's actually about, again, there's like near the end where he's literally like helping people get onto helicopters. Like, he didn't just like vanish in the night. Like, how often did we ever just see Batman in movies and it's like he beats up the bad guys and then somebody turns around to thank him and he's disappeared? Like, what a douchebag. Like, I want to say thank you. And you over here like, you're like, no, I gotta get to the other crime on 6th Avenue. Like, and another observation I had about Batman, to your point though, the only criticism I had about Batman and realizing watching this movie is that Batman may be, though, single-handedly the most boring superhero out there, because he just has one level, and that's brooding. Like, like he's never excited, he's never frustrated, he's just Batman the whole time. Like, he feels like he has to like operate at this just medium level of everything, and I'm just like, this is the problem with this character. He never really just like dives into anything.
Yeah, we never see like, what he's what he likes doing. He doesn't like doing anything other than
like even his romance with Catwoman though is like the driest thing on the planet. Like you just look at those two people and how they interact in the movie, and it's just like they'd have a terrible marriage because he never even looks like he's happy with her. Like he's just content to not like, oh, I'm not alone, so I have somebody.
Yeah. Well, so and again, but like that's I think something that I'll commend the director for, the writer director for, again, is like it's also the first version of Batman where we kind of realize that someone who actually does this, who suffered a trauma, watched his parents murder in front of him, and then became a caped crusader who like fights people at night, that's a mentally ill person. Like that is like that's unhealthy. Like that is, you're not well. And I think that was like, to your point, like he can't have a normal relationship because he's mentally ill. Like he's not right in the head. And I think Pattinson really nailed that part of it, is like he's kind of incapable of having human relationships, because he is just like, walled himself off and just poured himself into this role of, Dark Knight. Another thing that I always liked about it was, another thing I liked about it that I was disappointed that no other Batman movie had done was, to me, growing up, Batman's superpower was that he was the world's greatest detective.
Yes.
Who happened to like also be a ninja. And like, but it was he's the world's greatest detective. And like, you really saw, they really leaned into that on this one. I really appreciated that. The fighting he was still too much of a brawler for me. That was like, seemed to be like holdover for Nolan. Like, honestly, for all of its faults, and they outweigh the good, but the best version of Batman in combat that I ever saw was it Justice League or was it Batman versus, I don't think I ever saw Justice League. So it had to have been Batman versus Superman, when he was like in the warehouse and he was using his like grappling hook to like pull crates, and then like he would push guys and pull, and like he was using all of his gadgets to engage multiple, and like sliding, jumping over things, and like kicking, like that. To me, like that's that's Batman. And
no,
so this was still a little bit too much of a brawler for me, of just like but to your point about him not disappearing into the night, I think that was a very artistic choice, because in the end, when he is just straight up pulling people out of the wreckage, it's the first time we see Batman in the daylight. And I think that combination, because the movie starts with him talking about shadows and the night, and I'm in the shadows and I am of the night and all this stuff. And then at the end of the movie, he's in the sunlight. I think it's a very artistic, that was very deliberate. And I love, that's the kind of stuff, like complete subtext, but I love that shit.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited for, again, in the comic book movie world that we live in. I'm excited to see if they potentially can springboard this. I know there's been a lot of talk, like as far as like Warner Brothers possibly looking to reboot their entire DC universe around this one film, because it's been so well received. Well, I feel like you kind of have to at this point. I mean, Batman looks like he's 25. You can't have him teaming up with Aquaman at this point.
Right. I mean, the first Wonder Woman was great, but the second one was brutal.
Terrible. I hate it so much.
Yeah, it was such a letdown. But what else was like? Oh, there's a deleted scene. Our listeners, go on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
After you watch all our videos and like them all and subscribe, go. There's a deleted scene where Batman interviews the Joker, and it's a given that he captured him some time ago. Like he's already Joker's already in Arkham. And it's sort of like a Clarice Starling, Hannibal Lecter kind of a situation of like, he just wants his opinion. He's like, who is this guy? Joker takes a look at the files, and it's filmed so well. You never really see Joker's face, but you know that there's so much scarring.
Oh, he is so creepy looking. Just from the little bit that you see, he looks,
it's great,
freakish.
But I think that represents like that turning point that we were talking about, because one thing that Joker because he is like this Hannibal Lecter, he's like, he basically like solves the crime He figures out who the Riddler is just looking at the case file when he's like this, psychological profiling genius. And then he tells Batman, I think the reason why this case is affecting you so much is deep down, you know that what this guy's doing is a good thing. Or like you agree with what Riddler's doing. I think that's how he says it. You agree with what he's doing. And they, show Batman and he's like, basically, yeah. I mean, and I think, and like that goes to the turning point of like, the Riddler is doing a better job of cleaning up Gotham than I am. And I think that was kind of the point of like, he's taking out mob bosses. He's taking out corrupt DAs and corrupt police commissioners. And I'm just sitting here punching teenagers on the subway train. And I think that was, I don't know where that scene would have fallen in the movie, but I think if it was right in the middle, would have been a great as a turning point. Cause that was essentially, I feel like Batman realizes that he's doing a better job of being Batman than Batman. Yeah.
No, I think that's a really good point. I think the other thing that you said earlier too, about, oh crap, I just had it and now I lost it. That might be a sign that we probably need to wrap up.
We've been talking Batman more than we talked about Miggy hitting 3,000.
We did. Listen, when Miggy saves Detroit from the Riddler, then he'll get that much airtime on this podcast.
When Miggy gets his own spotlight in the sky.
I don't even know what that would look like. It couldn't be just like a tiger because that would just be lame.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
all right.
We've covered a lot. I think we did pretty well. Scott missed out on some good. He's definitely going to be mad that he missed out on the Batman talk. I know that for sure.
I feel bummed about that. And we're only at an hour and a half. I feel like we kept it pretty tight.
Yeah, we kept it together for the most part. Nothing too outlandish. Yeah. Scotty did send us a couple of good photos. He got to take a picture with Austin Eckler, which is pretty cool. So it looks like he's having the time of his life. Scotty, we miss you. We hopefully, made you proud with the episode. But let's go ahead and get out of here. I want to give a special thank you and shout out to my wife, my kids, my family, Scotty with him not being here, and all of you guys that follow us, subscribe to us, like our videos, take the time to engage with us back and forth, even when we're being a little difficult in the comments. We appreciate it. You guys make this even more fun than it already is. John?
Yeah, I agree. The engagement is fantastic, even if we may not agree, but it's nice to see. And it's a lot of fun. We go through them. So, we are accessible. But yeah, I want to thank my wife, as always. And you guys and our people who, take the time to comment on videos on the internet.
All right. Well, that'll do it. So you got Meko, Gionne, and this has been the Questionable Podcast. Out.